All right, so we're live now.
Woohoo!
So the first discussion prompt was about what makes a good leader. It was what qualities make a good leader, what qualities make a poor leader, and consider material from the text and lectures and personal experiences.
Gotcha.
So for me, when I thought about a good leader, I just think of somebody who's going to be really organized. And I know the book mentioned being service-oriented to your followers. So I think a leader that's really focused on their followers and serving them rather than, serving their own goals and priorities makes a good leader. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I actually found where it talked about how there's a real difference between managers and leaders. And I never really thought about that, but I was thinking back to all my past managers. I was yeah, I'm pretty sure I've had one real leader, but the rest are just managers. There's such a difference, between them.
Yeah, I think one thing that the way that I view leadership is leadership is where a good leader versus a manager. A leader is actually trying to take the values of the followers and the values from upper management or wherever, and just trying to kind of unite them and trying to collaborate through that. And so I think whereas managers typically just will take one and then be trying to control, and so I think the real good leaders are the ones who listen and can absorb another person in a sense, where they can absorb everything that they what's behind certain motivations or behind certain actions, and being able to motivate that or be able to use that and try to kind of make it a win-win deal,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one of the most important things that I think a leader needs is being able to motivate others, because I just think if you're not able to motivate your team or motivate your employees, there's going to be no reasoning behind all the actions. There's going to be no why behind the what. So motivation is a huge characteristic that I think is super important, and it talked about motivation a lot in chapter 1 too.
So I'll add in. When I was reading chapter 1 and 2. So I'm a district manager at Starbucks. So I think I've worked for, 3 major companies. I worked for Albertsons, Target, and Starbucks. I've been with Starbucks for 14 years. I can tell you I've worked for a lot of different leaders. I think that when I was reading chapter 1 and 2, I think the communication style that a leader uses that brings the best out in people is pretty much the key to being a good leader. And then a leader that tries to make a difference, that really, to me, if they're doing, just the basics of their job and not really making a difference, I don't think they're really leading a team in a great direction. And I also think the most successful leaders are people that can influence, because when it talks about using authority, your authority as a power versus using your influences, that really separates, average leaders from good leaders, in my own opinion.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Being able to influence people will definitely bring out the best in others when you're trying to be a good leader. I think when I think about this chapter for the McGregor's X and Y theories, I think the best types of leaders are the Y type of leaders, where they empower the people that they're leading, and they know that they don't have to micromanage, and they can kind of give the followers more wiggle room into what they're doing, because then of course the followers are, it's not a micromanaging situation, but also it kind of creates room for more creativity amongst the followers as well. So I think that was a better type of management style or leadership style versus the X theory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I keep thinking, so I'm a shift supervisor at Starbucks, and I just keep thinking about throughout this whole first two chapters, I keep thinking about my own store manager. I actually just switched stores, so I was at this old store with a store manager who I think was just a very poor leader. And then now I just switched stores to a store manager who's actually a really good leader. So it's kind of, I can't help but think about all that. And the old store manager, she was like always absent and very like always itching to be in the back room and not really trying to work with us. And a lot of the times when the district manager would come in or other store managers or something, she would suddenly turn into this like good store manager, like always trying to be with us and trying to coach us and stuff. But she lost the trust of everyone basically. And I think I like when I was especially reading the chapter on bad leadership, I was reading the I don't know how to pronounce it, Machiavellianism, where it was saying that they're skilled at manipulating others to achieve their ends, and I couldn't help but think that because she was always asking us to do stuff that would actually make her look good in front of the district manager. Meanwhile, not listening to the people under her, not working with them, always being cynical, and so it was kind of a nightmare situation, and so many people ended up leaving because they just did not like working for her. And I guess I was one of those people too. And so one thing that I really like about the new store manager is that she's present, like definitely empowering people, giving people opportunities, letting go of control. I think that's a big thing. Like when leaders, I think the best leaders kind of give out control and empower people and kind of allow people to be in charge of stuff. And that gives the followers, I think, confidence and gives them a sense of purpose as well.
Yeah.
Well, and builds trust, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I, in one day with this new store manager, I already trust her a lot more, just because she's got like a plan for how I'm going to get acclimated to the store and everything. And it's such night and day from the old store manager that I had.
Well, I can tell you in my own experience, those bad leaders, you learn what not to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
The leaders, you're like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yes. And that's actually one big thing. Yeah. One big thing that I was thinking, and I posted this on the discussion. I was thinking back because I'm trying to get promoted and get to store manager and all that. So one thing I was thinking of was I was trying to think back when this new store manager, with my old store. So my old store I had one store manager who was a good store manager for like 3 years, and then she was replaced last summer by this new store manager who's the bad one, and now I just transferred to a new store. So when this bad store manager first arrived, she started changing immediately within 1 week. She started changing things up, like moving the ovens around and changing the way we do things and doing all this stuff. And those decisions themselves were not necessarily bad, but by doing it, it felt like she was just taking a sword and slashing a bunch of like everything that everyone kind of had the sense of like, this is how we do it. They kind of are attached to the store, and it felt like she was just destroying all of that. And so I think that was part of like when I read the symbolic communication, that kind of communication where she's just like, she got rid of a cutting board, moved the ovens around, said we like person who's on bar can't wear a headset or something like that. And so like those decisions might have been good, but they were not, she made them in such a way that they did not build trust with people. And so I was thinking about, okay, if I'm ever going to be a store manager, how do I implement changes that I want in the store while still protecting the trust that I have with the people and with the partners, is what we call employees there. So
yeah, and I think a lot of that also has to do with like you guys were talking about before, like delegating power and kind of approaching new changes in a democratic style, maybe taking like, suggestions from, people that are already working there on your team, or even just letting them know and asking, hey, how do you guys feel about this before implementing the change? Right. That way they feel like they're at least kind of part of the decision as well.
Yeah.
So another thing that I thought, just like with a poor leader from my personal experience, is just like lack of organization. Like with my first job I ever had, it was at this Chinese restaurant, and not only did there was like language barrier kind of situation when, training. I remember, going into my first day of work feeling so overwhelmed, and they were just telling me to do this and that and like everything. There wasn't any clear set goals or standards for anything. So I think with a poor leader, having that lack of organization is going to create unhappiness and for the employees or the followers that are in the situation.
Yeah, so I definitely want to add in, because I think trust in work situations is super important. If you're not able to be trusted by your employees, then everything kind of else falls apart. Chapter 1 talked a lot about how many leaders are super narcissistic and they only have like their thought and like their well-being in mind. And so that plays in with like the whole trust thing. If your employees are seeing that you're only thinking about yourself and doing what's best for you, then they're kind of iffy about everything else. So you can't, like, as a leader, you can't only think about yourself. You definitely have to have everybody else in mind, especially the company. But having the trust of your employees and having the respect of your employees is going to be super important too.
Yeah. When I used to work at this one restaurant, and I had a leader, which I didn't even know there was a name for it, but it was like the M word, the Machiavellian like word. And he was so like, he like knew what to say. Like, okay, he was like a terrible boss, but the company like kept him in power because he like made them a lot of money and he knew like what to say to them. Like he was very, oh my gosh, but he was so self-centered. And the reason also was like when new people would come and work in our store, like when I was reading the thing about followers, about how there's like, it was like, I forget what the name, it was like colluders and like another type conformers or some followers that like, and it was saying the different types of followers, like, and that's also what kept him, was like the people that had worked there for a long time just kind of like were on his side. Like they kind of knew that he was like that, but just like sided with him because they would get the benefits. Like he would treat them well, like if they supported him. And so I remember when like new people would come to our store and they'd be like, how do you work for him? And like people would stick up for him because like they were like on his good side and they just wanted to like stay that way. So I feel like that's like a really bad cycle of how like bad leaders like a lot of times can stay in power too.
Yeah.
It's like not having good followers.
Yeah, that happens more oftentimes than not. So
Well,
unfortunately, but
I can definitely give my my worst experience. I've worked for leaders that solely managed by their positional power. You're just going to do it because, like the 80s manager, you're going to do it because I'm your boss. They cannot, they don't have the ability to influence their team. But the biggest thing that I noticed, like the worst leaders that I worked for, they had a lack of emotional influence, emotional intelligence. Their emotional intelligence level was, because they were selfish, they were only thinking of themselves and not their team. So they never made like a human connection between them and their team members or their partners or whatever you want to call them, their followers. They literally made decisions based off of like their own personal schedule, their own, like their boss is coming to town, they're going to put certain people on a certain shift and make it look like a dog and pony show. Those are the worst leaders I've worked for.
All right. Well, we're actually at like a little over 13 minutes now. So, any like final closing thoughts for the discussion at all?
Okay.
All right. I'm going to stop the broadcast right now. 1 second.